All right, it is 6:30. Why don't we go ahead and get going? Roll call. We've already kind of established who's here. If you want to take note, Tyler, on that.
Yep.
Um,
Hear the door.
Here's a door. See who walks in the door here. For 1 second. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
We have an audience.
I know.
Welcome.
You missed it.
One of the-
We hardly have an audience. Great, we have an audience. All right, so we done that. You made it just in time for public comment. Is there any public comment?
No, I'm just interested in how you're proceeding here.
All right, great.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Vicki? So I'm Vicki Tura. We had a couple businesses in town on a couple commercial properties. And looking forward to doing something future with the lumber property.
Oh, yeah.
Great. And I don't think there's anybody else online, for any public comment. Hearing no public comment, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of June 11th. Do I have a
I have a
motion?
correction.
Do you have a correction? Okay.
There's no H in whippersnappers.
Oh.
And you were the only one that was gonna catch that.
We can correct that.
Yeah.
I think I messed that up before. so-
Chair.
Chris
Chair,
I might have
just-
caught it.
Oh, Rich.
Oh,
I
okay.
forgot Rich is coming. Rich is on there. Look over, from Laura.
Lori?
Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, So,
Come on in.
The last name, but
Hello.
I don't know if the Claire's one, but I do.
Got the whole family going.
Yeah.
All right, so any other corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for June 11th?
I'll move to approve.
All right,
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Hearing none, approved unanimously. And you make sure. Chris and Ann, is that or Aaron, is that a thumbs up for both of you? Aaron, all right, thanks.
Chair, I will say, Rich did say that he was gonna be about 15 minutes late to the meeting, so
Okay,
he's gonna be coming.
he'll, we'll catch him up, a little later then.
Okay.
All right, new business, entrance signs and marketing banners. So Kathleen, you wanna,
So, one of the things that, Tyler and I have kind of talked about is the fact that our entrance signing could be better, on either end of town, and, you know, to really kind of, you know, you go, as you can see the signs there. I honestly never noticed a couple of these, just driving by until he said, well, we do have some, and I had to kind of go on Google Street View, because it's not something that I, you know, even noticed. So I think having some, you know, I would like to kind of see us have something a little bit more visible. And, you know, just like a lot of the other towns do. We do have that entrance signing to downtown, which is a little bit more visible. One of the things that we talked about also was, you know, kind of including our old tagline, Gateway to Mount Hood, because that's kind of what we've always been. If you look at Troutdale, they have the big, huge metal thing over there, and it's Gateway to the Gorge. And so I thought that might be kind of a nice moniker to kind of reclaim in our welcome sign. There, you know, as far as what kind of welcome sign we have, you know, it's obviously Sandy style with some stone, timbers, you know, black wrought iron stuff. Something that's, you know, obviously Sandy style, but also something really visible. I know, like, if you look at the little arch over here outside, going into Mining Park, and even like the Johnswood Park sign, you know, when you put kind of wood with black wrought iron, that wood gets really dark over time, and it's just not real visible. And so I think it's really helpful to have, you know, a landscape architect kind of help design something that's really visible. We give them some sideboards of what we're looking for. And then we, you know, these are just kind of conceptual, just to kind of get us off the, get us going. So that's the entrance signs. And then there's the marketing banners. You've heard me talk about those before. Our marketing banners, you know, as far as they go, they're all kind of the same. I think they're all the same on one side and then they're slightly different. You can kind of see at the bottom of that page that, you know, the Sandy versus the peak something or other. They're not real visible, and number one, they're pretty small. The ones especially over there on, well, some of them are on these little, you know, like, you can see the little light fixture there where the blue and turquoise one is. And then some of them are on the phone pole. But even when you kind of look at, you know, one of those pictures, the signs aren't that much bigger than the, you know, all, in fact, some of them are even smaller than the big, huge flowering baskets underneath them. And so they don't stand out very much. So what I think, you know, I'm kind of copying this idea from what they did up in government camp, and Hans is familiar with that effort. Where we used tax increment financing to kind of put in some banners that kind of just marketed the different destinations in a similar way. And so kind of putting, you know, some ideas, and these are just all conceptual, just to give you an idea, but, you know, just kind of to market the different things that we have to offer in Sandy. And, you know, the different destinations, obviously the parks, but also, you know, the mountain festival, you know, events. And then tying those with a wayfinding plan, wayfinding signs that are also much more visible and able to direct people going through town, you know, where these places are. So that's kind of the thought. You know, we've got a lot of potential there, putting them on those light poles and stuff. We have potentials to make them larger. We need some, you know, to do some, you know, I'd like to see us get some nice wrought iron type holders to hold these banners. But there's a lot of potential there to kind of make them larger and more visible and more attractive. And it could also kind of repeat, you know, like if you had a series of, you know, 6 to 8, you know, you might consider having them repeat so that, you know, people kind of see a glance of it as they're going by, and then they get a stop sign or something, or stoplight. You know, they can kind of look closer going through town. So that is kind of the ideas. I just wanted to get y'all's input on ideas and thoughts about the design and location of the city entrance sign, the thoughts and designs on any logistics of and design for marketing banners and wayfinding signs, and, you know, bottom line support for proceeding with some sort of a design contract for review of preliminary and final alternatives, followed by construction of entrance signs, banners, and wayfinding signs. And I thought, you know, now's a good time to kind of start doing this, because, you know, that you can kind of work on all that design stuff, and then hopefully maybe, you know, spring, early summer, get stuff construction and posting underway.
Thank you. I'll just remind everyone that we used to have an entrance out there on the west side, but then when Tractor Supplies went in, they kind of had to take it down and mothball it at Public Works or wherever it's being stored, or now it may be
We have
recycled.
it still.
Still have it. But we did have one down there towards that entrance of town that had that. It was much smaller in size. When this has come up before, especially the entrance, and actually one of the proposals about 20 years ago, we had one that went over all of 26 there down Bluff, kind of like what is at now in Troutdale too.
Mhm.
Something very large, and you know, that was an idea that was used during the Sandy style and redoing of the sidewalks and undergrounding those telephone lines. But any comments, thoughts?
Well, I'm not a fan of the bottom two. I like the wood design better. I could stand out a little bit more. I'd like to see it down at the far end of town by Tractor Supply, somewhere where you're actually coming into Sandy
Yeah,
before you. I mean, there's a lot of Sandy before it's
Right.
just a one way.
yeah.
Yeah, I think our problem was back then is someone had let us use that land to put it on there. The city didn't own the land, and then they said, and they didn't really care for us anymore because of some of the requirements when they went to develop and, you know, get the sign out of here. And then there's the right of way that we couldn't, ODOT owns, that they wouldn't let us put it in that. So you may need
Is
it,
that a hard and fast, we can't put any sign in the right of way?
not a hardened one from the past experience of what I recall us discussing back then, especially
Isn't there a median there for 362nd?
right next to Arco.
There's something down there by Jarl, kind of a little median, I think.
But anyways,
Yeah.
Tyler, you look like you were gonna say something.
Well, I was just gonna say, you know,
ODOT is a partner that can be challenging to work with sometimes. We would need to, flush out with them exactly where we could and could not put something in the right of way. But I think, this initial concept of like, conceptually, is there an interest to do it? And if so, are we talking about a big sort of monumental thing? I need some information to work with ODOT to kind of get a, yes, this might work. No, this is a complete no-go. So just, some kind of guardrails for that conversation with ODOT.
Yeah.
Sabella Farms would be much probably more friendly, and that's just west of Tractor Supply. And then also,
Sabella doesn't own that anymore.
oh,
They
okay,
haven't owned it for probably 7-8 years.
okay, so it ruins it, yeah. But so, being on private property is one thing, and then, being on if you are in the highway. ODOT right away, I know I was working with a bunch of folks up the mountain to do those village entry signs, they wanted signs for Wenny, Welch's, all these signs all along there. As if anybody knew the difference of where Welch's started and Wenny ended or whatever, but that aside, I worked with ODOT and stuff, and so they just required, they were gonna allow it, but it was just had to be breakaway material, type of material was a requirement, so.
And that material changes based on the speed zone that it's in, which is
Uh-huh.
why we can have a certain type of transit
Yeah.
stop at one part of the highway, but a different type of transit stop at a different part of the highway. There's lots of intricacies there.
I don't think it should stop the conversation. I think that, I'm not hearing any negative.
I think it's a good idea. I was gonna ask, there would be still the two that are currently where the lanes split,
Downtown,
right?
yeah,
And then there would just be two new ones kind of at the outer edges, right? Is that what you're thinking? I think that's a good idea.
And that's what I would suggest. I think having, sort of a really prominent, like Sandy, and you're here, separate from welcome to downtown Sandy, right? So kind of just designating those two areas.
These,
And to your point, Hans, there's a lot before you get to downtown
Right.
Sandy, right? I think most people traveling
Yeah.
westbound have no idea where Sandy starts or stops, right? We know where the line is, but
Right.
the average driver has no clue. So just having a real prominent sort of,
Mhm.
here you are.
Right.
Um,
And it's a little goofy because, it goes all the way out to Space Age there on the one side, but
Yeah.
on the other side, not yet, kind of
Yep.
thing, so.
I really
Uh,
like, oh, sorry.
go ahead, 'cause
I was just gonna say, I really like the idea of what you were saying, which is marketing downtown separate from just the city as a whole. I also prefer the top two on there.
Mhm.
I would love to see it if we could kind of make that inner part or part of the inner part maybe replaceable for instance, kind of where the seal is, because we do go through times where we have different taglines, we have different seals, we have different colors. And I don't know, at least as I look at the downtown, going into downtown sign with kind of those older colors, it starts to look dated quicker, right? And so kind of keeping the Sandy style, the wood, the stone, the timeless things with more of whatever we're doing right now that we can kind of trade out, with that seal seems to make sense over time, so we can
Yeah.
keep it updated.
But we don't have to have a seal because,
Or whatever it
Yeah,
happens
yeah,
to be,
right, yeah.
the part that is the new thing.
well, and with the seal, it's like, you're going by so quick, it's,
Yeah, I mean, I really like the mountain, the
Yeah,
mountain one in
right,
particular, I
yeah.
think it combines it with potentially the rest of our marketing and ties everything together, which I really like. But I know in 5 years, when we come up with something new, we're not gonna want that there, like, so if that
Exactly,
part
yeah.
like came out and we could
Yeah.
put in something else,
Yeah.
I think keep us up to date and modern.
I like it. I do think it needs to be large in size, because
Lit up.
well, lit up would be great, but I mean, just large, because at on those edges of town, you're driving that 45 or 55 or the chief's not on mine.
Chief's not on.
Or some people may be driving faster than that, but you won't see it as much if it's just really small,
Yeah.
right? And
Have
you'll
you
kind of-
seen the big ones at government camp on each end? One's by the rest station, and one's down by Ski Bowl. They're massive. They're
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
huge giant pillar bases, 4 posts and a
Yeah.
roof over it. Sign hung in the middle with lit up.
And that's what
And
I
you
was gonna
notice
say,
it,
that's,
and it
that's
looks
the
really
kind of,
good.
that's the architecture feature I like. I also like wood and iron.
Yeah.
So I was envisioning that pillar, that wood around it with the big iron center,
Mhm.
you could put a replaceable in there
Yeah.
and definitely on each end of the town. I like the concept of leaving the downtown alone,
Yeah,
with the way it is.
but something substantial, it has to be a
What's
decent.
substantive,
Okay.
right?
It's gonna be noticed.
Yeah,
It's
otherwise
not
it's
worth-
not worth the money to
Mhm.
put in there. Okay, so I'm hearing positive there. What about with the other one, the banners, going through there? And these are just conceptual, it's just something that Kathleen had put on there as the pictures, they may not be the same pictures, but.
The risk manager in me says I should have a helmet.
I know, I was trying to find.
Well, I was going with the kids going, did you get the agreements from the parents to be able to use those pictures?
Right.
But
Yeah, I think the concept's good. Maybe just refine some of the images and maybe, I don't know, like, should there be a Sandy Net one? Should there be?
And I wonder how, when you say bigger, how big is bigger? Because that matters to me, because
Mhm.
it's about visibility.
Mhm.
And if you make it too big so that the sign's easily readable, then you start to block business, you know, as you look through it.
Sure, yeah.
And then you also have to worry about like wind coming downtown
Mhm.
and damaging it, so.
I was thinking about trucks. Can't tell how many times I've seen trucks backing up along this, you know, and they back around
Any side.
plants or trees or whatever.
Get them
so
up
it's kinda
high
make sure it
enough.
Stays out of the way. you know.
Okay, that's a good point, yeah,
yeah, that's a good one, I didn't think of.
yeah.
I worry that the pictures are a little too busy. I mean, even though they're a good sized flag out there, I do agree that like, especially if you look at just the current banner that's white that says Sandy, that, you know, I never see those. But I think that more is needed, but if you take a look at this other one, which has kind of the blue background, you know, if you change up, you do kind of variations of that with different colors, you know, Christmas colors and then have Winterfest as the one kind of word on there in Minot Park. I think you are more likely to grab people's attention real fast as they're driving by, because when they're seeing these, they're either doing, or they're gonna be mostly in the downtown area, which is super crazy busy.
Yeah,
You know,
they
there's
should be.
lots of stuff to pay attention to, lots of other signage, and so you're competing for people's attention, and they're gonna have half a second to grab it.
Mhm.
And I think if you have a busy picture, you're gonna get them trying to focus on what the picture is instead of what you're trying to market.
Keep it simple,
Good
stupid.
point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, invoke that emotion, use the colors you want, you know, for the parks ones, use the greens, use the browns, you know, something more modern.
Do you mean not a photo?
Yeah. I mean, you can have some kind of image, you know, and maybe that's, you know, but it's a simpler image. A very much, not a, probably not a
I
photograph.
think that's what they did in Gumby too. They were just
No, they did
Some-
photos.
some photos, but some images too.
But just, I mean, like
I
when
do
you're,
like the idea of advertising our, you know, the amenities in
Mhm.
town, right? Base camp.
Yeah.
The splash pad, and the Jandra, the tickle treats, and I think that's great. Just how to make it stand out on, you know, with whatever background you're gonna have.
Yeah.
I'm sure at that point we'll get a marketing company
Right.
involved that would.
Yeah, and we can kind of mock things up on paper and, you know, try them out and look at different options too.
Hey, I'll jump in here and just say, you know, this sort of kicked off a lot of internal conversations about the need for better photography for internal purposes so that we can market our own parks, for example. You know, many of the thumbnails on the website of our local parks haven't been updated in like 15 or 20 years. They're old play structures that have been replaced. They're undeveloped parks or just don't have, you know, good new materials. And so we've reached out to a local photographer that specializes in sort of you know, the marketing lens, not like your family photos, right? But a different type of photograph style, just to kind of get an idea of what something like that would cost to get photos that are both, if we go that route, you know, banner ready quality photos. And if we don't use them for that purpose and just use them for other marketing materials, having a good set of documents that we could then publish, you know, a trifold that we can put in local businesses in the downtown. So they recognize this image on a banner is the same image that I saw, you know, at the kiosk when I'm paying for my coffee or getting a beer, and, you know, just sort of reinforcing that there is more to Sandy than just what's along the highway that you see when you're driving through, and trying to capture the attention of people that are stopping that don't live here, so that they want to either stay here and do something else or come back. You know, Whippersnappers, I think, is a great place that, you know, I don't live in city limits, but my kids go not so frequently now that school's back in session, but you know, there's a lot of families that come to a business like that that don't live in Sandy, and if there was something at your, checkout counter that was like all the Sandy Parks and.
Okay.
So how can we utilize existing businesses to help promote the city amenities? Because they're stopping here and they're spending their money here. We can all benefit from that interconnectedness. So I think this is just one step in a step of many on marketing and trying to get people to stop and stay. And
Having
enjoy
a
Sandy.
bigger depth of photos,
Yeah,
recent photos, up-to-date ones, and keeping that on a rotation, not letting them get too old, maybe every couple of years or something.
yeah, we don't need new ones every year, but we need new ones more than every 10 or 15 years.
Right, I gotta say a couple of years, few years. I like it. I like having it a little bit bigger. We don't want it to have too much because wind and those type of things, but they have to make those holes through them to help with that. I think in the downtown, you are driving a little bit slower, hopefully.
These would just be downtown.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, and so
Envision.
especially during, call it rush hour, it seems like that goes on
And there's a lot of
forever.
walkability in.
And walking around, and you've got the Friday market that goes on, and I think it just adds also a community vibe with it. I know when I go into other communities and other places, it just kind of brings that out. I think sometimes we go too small on things. Maybe we're trying to save a buck, but it is just too small, and it just kind of looks like you tried, but wasn't there. But not to be ginormous or anything, but just I think there's an appropriate size for what we're trying to see when we're driving by. As far as the photos go, I don't know. I guess I'm willing to try it. I think I've seen in other communities where they've had some photos like that. But I think you need to figure out which is the best photo for when you're driving by for that. And if it doesn't work or it doesn't look bad, we're talking about wanting to make a rotation, and you can rotate them out and rotate it. I think there's going to be needing to be a little bit of this worked and that didn't work, I think.
I mean, really, the big expense with something like this is replacing all the hardware, right? If you order sets of, let's say we need, I'm making up a number because I don't know how many banners we have, but let's say you need 24 and we need to replace 4 of them. Replacing 4 because we don't like that image or it didn't have the appeal
Right.
that we thought it was once it's up there. That's small dollars, right? It's the new hardware and the big initial project cost that's
Figuring
the,
out the size and the.
yeah, and that's gonna probably
I
take
would
some-
think it'd be the graphic that's gonna cost you a lot of money, because the hardware's gonna be relatively inexpensive, except for labor.
What,
well, it's,
Labor and putting it
Yeah.
there and.
And the hardware, each one should have not just the holders for the banners, but each one should have a flower basket also, so that you tie it all together.
well, I guess that's a great point, incorporating everything we hang into
Right.
one sort of structural
Yeah.
piece instead of
Yeah.
a metal arm here, a metal arm here, a metal arm here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What we've done in some other communities, like what you guys really need is versus like a conceptual wayfinding signage plan, just to kind of identify your locations. And then look at like 2 to 3 different kind of using the style that you've been talking about here. Kind of vet that out, and then the locations. We're seeing a lot of cities going to like a stand with like more of a fiberglass where they can change that out. Canby did, for example, they went in and they used some pictures on their banners too. And what I'd recommend, what we did there is just kind of do a mock-up first, so you can kind of see a size and try a couple of different ones. And
Yeah.
okay, that's what we like from that standpoint. But I think your first step is just identify, like you said, the entrance. What you're saying is like something prominent, like what are some like, what is the color and what you want to see, and how can you interchange that? So that's, I think, really the like for that. And then what is that style? And then how you carry that through down to downtown business park area for transition. So that works out really good. So.
yeah, I would love to see the rotation. So we have some for like wintertime,
Yeah.
some for summertime, even if they're advertising the same things, but maybe
Yeah,
a different
just a
color scheme,
different
something that
scheme.
brings
Brings
that
in the
theme
autumn, and
in
then you bring a
for,
winter theme.
Well,
Yeah.
you notice that change when you're coming through town.
You
We get a
do.
lot of repeat drivers, whether
Mhm.
you live here or live in the area, but you got like the mountain and everyone going over for skiing or, summer
Yep.
place at the lake. So,
But that was a good point about, there's the wayfinding step, but we want to, it's like the fonts and everything else for the design of the wayfinding sign should be the same for the entrance sign and the same for the banners.
And then
As
kind
far
of
as-
carrying your downtown theming,
Right.
then it helps too, so.
all right. Chris, Aaron online there, do you guys have any comments?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. Pretty much the same way, yeah, most of it's been said.
All right, thanks. All right, well, hopefully that gives maybe some support and direction to staff and
I just want to
council.
clear, any
and-
heartburn with going with Gateway to Mount Hood?
I've always liked it, personally. I know there was a feeling years ago on council from some outside sources that we hired. To say, you gotta get away from the gateway part because it sounds like you're leaving. It's a great way to leave your communicate and you wanna keep people in to buy internally. I don't know. I don't necessarily, I understand their theory on that, but I don't think we're the big enough town, a city that, you know, people are already on their way through. So I think it's a good tagline to be that, you know.
It's a better tagline on the way up than on the way down.
Yeah, I mean, we can have a tagline on the way back.
You know, maybe on the way.
I don't know
down,
if I wanna be
great
the
place-
gateway to Portland.
Maybe it's a great place to stop by. I don't know, something, you know,
Your last chance before you hit Portland. Stop. Yeah, right, okay.
find a restroom now. It's a
I'm
long
going really
haul.
south, aren't I? But yeah, I hear you.
I like the gateway, as long as everybody's on board with it. And it gets used for everything and we don't have 3 taglines.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, all right. Let's move on. The overview of Sandy Ignite plan. John.
All right, well, thank you, and a great happy to be here this evening. Really appreciate having the chance to talk to you all tonight and get feedback. We'd like to bring this forward to the Urban Renewal Board next Monday to get approval for this. So we went in and we, you know, did a lot of outreach to the business community, talking to business owners to understand what some of the challenges were in the urban renewal area here. And from that, we came forward with the new Sandy Ignite program to make a recommendation here to really think about a new program that will help business owners be able to move forward with investment in the downtown area here. And from that, there's really, you know, 3 main takeaways to think about. So what we found, example, we met with all these owners up here, some of the boards, like what were some of their challenges, what were some of the next steps that they needed to meet with. We met with the tours too. And really coming out of that, there's 3 programs that we're proposing is to think about, right? And the first program that we call the Business Community Concept Design Grant Program there. And that's really helping these property owners to think about being able to go to the next step, getting some conceptual design done and looking at how they can move their property forward to that standpoint. And in that grant program, we would set aside $100,000 and they could apply for up to $25,000 and they would have to match that with 50% of their financing there. So what this really allows these property owners to do is think about, you know, doing their architectural engineering, get an architect on board, understanding the engineering design, the criteria for their site. They will also have an investment in that process there. So that's a great process to help people move forward to understanding what they can fit and what will work on their property there. The next program that we're proposing within there is called the Capital Grant Program. So think of this as like after you've got your engineering done, you're ready to start, you're ready to make some type of investment in there. And we're looking to set aside $400,000 for that program there. And that could be up to $100,000 grant. They would be responsible to match that with 50%. So really
That stimulates the private investment.
it's private, yes, it does, sorry, yeah, it does. And then what we've found is like these larger capital investments, you're actually gonna find folks that are really moving forward to that next step of doing the process there. And then the last thing is really taking $1 million and setting that aside for up to $250,000 revolving loan. And for example, like some of these property owners we've talked, there might be somewhat of a gap there and we can step in and fill that gap. We can work with, have some flexible term financing structure within that their standpoint there. So these are 3 programs that I think that'll really help move these properties forward or get people at the table to start bringing in and doing the engineering, architectural and or making capital requests from that standpoint there. So that's what I think would be really something we want to hear back from you, but then again, measuring this, we want to see that that we're creating living wage jobs here, so that's part of the scoring criteria you'll see in the packet that we talked about. We do that off of the MIT calculator, so when we look at a waging job, and it has to be at least 32 hours, so making sure that we have opportunities in the scoring criteria around living wage job. And then also just looking at long-term business operations within the business community here too. So typically we find that investment like this capital investment that cities make, you get $3 to $5 return on that investment. And when you look at the future property tax revenue and the income that will come to stay in the city, it's long-term beneficial from that standpoint there too. The other thing too is when a company or operator would apply, we monitor this by requesting like the past 3 years of their income statement, the profit and loss statements. We'll need to look at that. So as we monitor those things to make, recommendations for successful candidates moving forward from that standpoint too. So happy to answer any questions too from that standpoint there.
Like I was asking them, when I first kind of saw this about, how do you pick, do you have kind of is this just a first come, first serve type thing, or is this a open season type thing?
Let me talk about that, Mayor, because what we would do is recommend that we launch this in May. I think later tonight, we have an item on here for the business appreciation event. And I think in June, we could probably, do it jointly with the chamber. One of the things I would recommend is like, showing what we're doing for the business community out here. Here's a program, but also bring in business organs, a partner here. What kind of incentives that they would have, the county and a couple of other partners to have a panel, but also have a, appreciation event for your business community. And then to launch the program, we're thinking we'd do it twice a year. So then seeing how many applicants, we would probably get applicants, that are in different stages. So you might get some that are in the concept stage, you might get some that are ready to go to full permitting and they're just needing some gap financing. And so do that twice a year. So think like January 1st and July 1st, and that would give us time to monitor and see how the program goes from that standpoint there. So,
Is it wholly funded through Shara only?
yes.
Through what?
Shara.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry, yeah.
that's the Sandy Urban Regional District.
Their money.
I mean, frankly, that's the only pot of money we have from a meaningful dollar amount perspective.
Well, that's why I asked Holy. I didn't know if if there's another, like maybe a way to get state funding to contribute towards what we're doing or something to that nature. If there was anything other than our coming from us wholly.
Well, I think there is, that's where there are these other loans out there, what do you work in, the group that you're on?
Yeah, for the Mountain Economic Alliance.
Right, so there's grants available through there to some businesses. There's the Clackamas County grants. One of the persons that are developing an industrial business in town just applied for $100,000 grant for a business in Sandy through Clackamas County Economic Development. So there's grants out there. Not every grant is gonna, there's not grants for every kind of business, but there are some opportunities there that I think, we would be, I think it's important that we be strategic about.
But those wouldn't help,
capital
those
stack.
wouldn't help when I say us, I mean the SURA fund. Those are gonna help the business owner.
Right.
Who needs to come up with their fair share.
I
of
use
that.
the Economic Alliance loan.
For you,
Very helpful, yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
so the SURA does the 50 and then they come up with their own and they would use it like.
And I think where those all do help out the SURA fund is that you get redevelopment, you get that tax base that then starts increasing because there's a value there.
Mhm.
And then puts back into the SURA. That's the whole point of the
Yep.
SURA. So where we can get some outside grants and funding, more power to it. And what I like about this is there's that gap funding. Reminds me of I went over and spent some time in Africa of doing a microfinancing in some really poor countries and starting businesses in this. It just kind of gives me the same memories of like, you just need a little bit of gap financing to get there. And some of that is some of that red tape that you have to get over that banks and other organizations just won't loan on. You just have to find it from, your brother or your family member or, some private investor that might have a high interest rate on. So I think that could help with getting over that hurdle or that hump on there. As far as putting in, I think we've talked about with John and others, just that, putting in some of those guardrails to protect the taxpayer, the fund right there to, if this doesn't happen, if someone does, there is a way of making sure, that, the city, the community, gets their money back in a form, but so it's a short-term
Yep.
financing in a way that isn't outrageous. It's not, and I think this is a great idea. And I hope we've tried a lot of different things over the years, and I think this is one of the better ones that have come up, so.
Are these totals, program totals, what you're suggesting? I guess I'm really just, is it enough? I think about the capital improvement grant program at 400,000 with a maximum award of 100,000. Say, okay, well, that's 4 businesses. Is that enough? Does it need to be more, or could it be more, or just can it be more at this stage?
I looked at it as it's a start. So let's see how this program works. Instead of putting too many in there, and in this first cycle, maybe there needs to be more. And so we're like, wow, this is popular, and it's really turning the Sura, redevelopment, or this isn't being taken advantage of, or you get your money locked up, or, is failing, it's not working.
I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'll say that, we're in the middle of a moratorium, right? So there's only
I
so
was gonna bring it up.
many businesses that can start from scratch and actually move to construction. So I think that sort of limits the scope of what we can reasonably do right now anyways. And to your point, Jeremy, kind of, seed money, for lack of a better term, of like, how successful is it? What's the take rate? We hear often that, we just need this little bit of money to finish a project. But until we have that little bit of money to offer to facilitate that gap, we don't really know, is that a true, like, factual, I am ready to build, I just need 50 grand to get over the finish line, or I think I'm ready to go, 50 grand would be helpful. It's hard to really identify what the helpful tool is, right? Is it really just the money, or is it the money mixed with the timeline, or the money mixed with the lenders being difficult, or, the money mixed with development being challenging? And so I think this will also just help us kind of back into what the actual crux of the issue is for those businesses that haven't developed yet. If it really truly is just financing, we can be the party that helps with that component. If it's something else, it's also good for us to find out.
And it's not financing for the whole project.
Oh,
It
yeah,
is
no,
really just to get over that
Mine was just
sticky
out of-
point of the chicken and the egg.
Out of the curiosity, is that, and I understand that it's a startup and it's seed, but is that enough, or is that's what you come up with as the suggested amount? And we can always change it.
100%.
Yeah, I think launching in the January and see if we're oversubscribed, now then going into budget season before July.
We're gonna do a 2-year budget, so this
Yeah,
would be, for the next
Yeah.
We're in the
18
off
months or
months.
so.
Yeah.
But, we'll be going into budget
Yeah.
planning
Planning.
So
13 months from now.
so my question, is this a good time to update us on where we're at with the sewer issue? Because that it's
So,
kind of
so
affects everything we do right now.
Sure. I don't have a lengthy update, but I can interject with
Sure.
kind of a brief recap of where we're at currently, and mayor or other council members, feel free to fill in anything that I leave out here. So, we had an allocation of ERUs, equivalent residential units, that were allocated to us by EPA with our existing capacity, and we've been working extensively on increasing that capacity and fixing other issues to increase that capacity. Part of our agreement with the EPA for our next 190 equivalent residential units is doing some very specific work at both the treatment plant and some other like pump station locations to ensure that we have the ability to treat, excessive flows from a wet weather event or something like that. So we've just completed, 2 weeks ago-ish now, the largest component of those outstanding projects, which was expanding the equalization basin at the treatment plant. So we essentially built the wall bigger, increased the amount of water that can be held at that site in the event that we are in an excessively wet weather event or can't discharge for any other purposes. So we're on track to complete all of these projects by September of 2026. That will unlock that next 190 equivalent residential units. We're gonna ask for those early and give a, extensive list of reasons why we should get those 190 early. The vast majority of those reasons being we're working really hard, we've spent a ton of money, we've completed, nearly all the projects you've asked, and we are actively working on the projects that aren't done yet. Here's the estimated timeline for those. And then the next 190 ERUs is the next step with that is really figuring out how do we allocate them, right? And so we're working on sort of a concept plan for how those 190 will be allocated. I can't share specifics on that because the council hasn't been briefed on that. That's a topic for next week. But we're actively working on kind of sort of what that allocation of the next tranche of ERUs looks like. Bigger scope of what are we, where are we at with the project?
Right.
We're also actively working on revising our wastewater,
Master plan.
thank you, couldn't get the words, the master plan amendment. That has to be adopted by the end of this calendar year. So what that plan amendment essentially does is here's all the options that were viable, that are conceptual. Here's the options that are actually viable. And then here's the options that you could reasonably move forward with, right? Something could be viable, but it becomes exponentially costly, or there's too many, too much red tape or too many hurdles that make it just not a feasible or likely path forward. I don't think it's a secret, that there's really two sort of options that are more reasonable than others, and that's going to the Sandy River as a discharge option or a neighboring community, Gresham, as an option. So we're updating all the project costs, finishing some analysis with City of Gresham to really identify the viability of that. And that plan amendment will be going before the council before the end of the year. We're also looking at ways to incorporate some sort of public meeting, work session, town hall, some type of event to make sure that there is a public input process before that plan goes before the council later this year to be adopted. Don't know the exact scope of what that looks like yet, but trying to make sure we do have a reasonable period for public input and questions and answers around how we get to the preferred alternative that plan gets us to. And then last sentence for me, and then I'll stop talking. Once we have that facility plan amendment adopted and we have our preferred alternative adopted, then the real work starts, right? It's finishing up the engineering and design plans associated with that plan. It's getting a construction timeline put together, and then, we'll have a much more articulate response to here's our scheduled end date, right? Here's when we really think we're out of this mess completely.
And there's no idea how long, what that end date, 5 years, 8
Well,
years.
For the
3
big,
years.
for the big.
For the final, to be done.
Final
with everything.
solution?
Yeah.
So
That's the big question.
Yeah.
there's a drop dead date. So when we signed the consent decree 2 years ago, that gave us 15 years to implement the permanent solution, whatever that permanent solution is. So we're 2 years into that. So we've got realistically 13 years to
Get it done.
get it done. I'm not saying that we're gonna take 13 years, but I'm saying there is a guardrail right at the end of that timeline, and that's 13 years from September 11th, 2023. Pipeline, whether it's all the way to Gresham or to the Sandy River, that's, a big endeavor, right? One is many miles longer than the other option, but one option takes a lot more private easement, process and ensure we get the land rights and land use to construct a pipeline through other, private property. And so best case scenario, maybe it's 5 years. A conservative, maybe a 7-year timeline, and then drop dead 13 years from where we're at today.
So more or less, it's down to those two options. No, I'm not counting on any, but those are the two, the pipeline to Gresham or the pipeline to the Sandy River.
Where we're at today, those are the two most viable. Now, if someone has, a great idea that hasn't been studied yet, that is reasonable and seems much less costly. I mean, I'm not gonna turn up my nose at anything right now, but
We've
With
had our
that-
consultants looking at.
Oh,
every
I'm sure.
possible-
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
catch up. So
There has been pushback on the Gresham option about, kind of giving up that whole idea, that idea of giving up control. And the things that I've learned, because I was one of those people that testified against hooking up to the city of Portland Bull Run line 12 years ago. But when you look at the rates that other, everybody's like, well, why is it this expensive here in Sandy? It's not this expensive in all these surrounding towns. And that's because all those surrounding towns, most of them are getting their water or wastewater through a consortium of regional water, like wastewater providers. There's West water, whatever,
Water
environmental
Environment
services or
Services.
something, and so they service Gladstone, Milwaukee, Oregon City, da, 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 da. And so, but if Gladstone or Milwaukee had to do what we're doing, then, they'd be paying huge rates too. And so there's that economy of scales that when we want to go alone, when we kind of want to have control, we get the whole bill and have to pay it. And so that's kind of the challenge of right now, Wood Village and Fairview get their wastewater through Gresham, and they pay far less. But just to give you an idea, the wastewater bill for a Gresham resident is less than half of what it is for Sandy. And so that's kind of a strong interest for me to kind of see, if we're really trying to get the rates down, how can we do that? And the idea, if we go to the Sandy River, we're paying the whole thing. And when we talk about, there's these things called PFAS. I don't know if you guys all know about those, but they're, some sort of the plastics and all that. Well, EPA is talking about having to, make more restrictions about how those get handled and, whether or not you can actually put them on, spread them around farm fields or whether you gotta haul them all the way to Arlington or whatever to get rid of them and all these other kind of things. And, we're just trying to get this project done. The idea that we would then have to take some other huge project to deal with PFAS or whatever, again, we would be paying for all of that ourselves. Whereas going Gresham, we would be, 13,000 people out of 200,000 people paying for it rather than paying the whole bill ourselves. So when people, I get the concern about, Multnomah County or whatever, but Gresham, giving up control, first of all, we aren't giving it up because we would be part of the, we would be on a committee to kind of help assess projects and set rates and all that. So we would have some control. We wouldn't have as much control of having it. We wouldn't have as much control as, as we have now, but then we wouldn't have the entire bill either. So just kind of, that's
Yeah.
what's gonna be kind of.
And Mayor, you didn't even say the words 3 basin rule or
Well, oh,
something.
yeah.
So-
I will just, throw in there too, we do have a document on our website that I can redistribute with this group if it hasn't been shared with you already. That outlines like the 9 options that we studied. Some were studied, more extensively than others because you realize pretty quickly that that's not viable or you need a lot of land to build a holding tank for all of the waste or, so those were ruled out early, but we have a document that outlines everything that we've studied to date and a brief summary as to why it either did or didn't get advanced. We're working on adding some more robust language to be a little bit more detailed on some of those options.
Yeah, because knowing the pros and cons, it's like, yeah, if you run in a plant, go to Gresham, you don't have to run a plant anymore, but you lose control, but is that important? I don't know. So that's what I'm just asking. So.
The biggest question I get asked is, when's it over? You asked that, right? And I mean, you clarified because I've always been
Yeah.
saying 5 to 15, 5 to 13 is what I should be
There we
saying.
go.
So what would be the gap between, if we get an extension of 100 and however many, 70,
90.
yeah, 190? Can we do that again? Is there another extension or that's the gap from there till we're done?
That's the gap. As it stands now, that's the gap until we're done. I think without opening up the whole next can of worms, to get anything beyond that 190, we would probably have to do another stress test. The stress test we did was $1 million and took a year and it was a lot, right? It was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money. And so if the option is, and the way I'm going to answer this is if we were going to Gresham, is there value in spending $1 million again to get 190 ERUs when we only need that for 2 years because we're already building a pipeline, right? So that's weighing that cost benefit analysis of probably not worth sinking any more money into studying our plan. Let's just hold off. We're actively building this other option. And I guess to that point, even if it's the Sandy River option, same thing, right? We're investing tens of millions of dollars building that project. Does it make a lot of sense to study our old plant any further?
Right.
And I'd argue probably not.
Is there a drop dead date to make a decision on which option?
So the facility plan amendment has to be adopted by the end of this year, and
Okay.
the preferred alternative has to be identified
So there we go.
as part of that plan.
So I'm gonna,
2 months.
I'm the timekeeper here,
Yep.
if you know how I run a meeting. Great conversation. We can pick it up at the end, if, you know, because we could go all day.
Oh, no, I think it's important.
I wanna
to
hear too.
understand what we're
Yeah, no, I think it's good to
trying
know.
to promote businesses and then, oh, but you can't come. to
Yeah,
this.
no, I think it's perfect little segue.
Yes.
I am gonna say, put in one
I'm
point,
gonna-
Jeremy. I'm gonna say that, you know, for this 190, our focus is emphasis on commercial and industrial.
So
Over residential.
I think that, yeah, we'll be bringing up here next, but so, and I'll have to say, when we built the agenda, built it with a timeline, and then we added something last minute, the entrance signage, so that took up a little bit of time, so if you feel like I'm pushing us along, I'm pushing us along. Because I
We're
do
used
like to
We're
be,
used to it, Jeremy. Thank
yeah,
you.
want to be respectful for everyone's time and try to get out of here at 8.
Jeremy, can I
yeah.
add one thing just about budget though? Because there was a question that I think we kind of half answered with,
Okay.
is it enough? There's $400,000 in the current budget within the urban renewal program for grant funding. So that was already earmarked for grants. We only spent $8,000 of that so far in this budget cycle. So we've got lots of grant funding available for a
But the
program.
the budget just started, right? It's 2 years, so that's gonna encapsulate that the remainder of
We
that.
pulled the existing grant programs off of our website because we knew that we were gonna be pivoting to something else. And so we're not, that $8,000 we spent is remnants of old grant programs from the end of last biennium. So think of it as 392,000 that's sort of untapped currently. So I think that coupled with the realistic quickness in which businesses could access these funds, coupled with going into the next biennium and building that budget, I think would be okay. We also do have contingency in urban renewal, so if there was a lot of interest in the council or the board was interested in allocating more, we can pivot.
So thank you. We're still on number 3 there of this plan. Thoughts on this plan? We've talked about it a little bit, but I haven't really asked, you know, your thoughts. Sounds like a good idea from what you've seen. Doesn't, should we
I
be
think so.
saying recommending going forward?
Is there a mechanism to assess need or a desire to assess need for the program? Versus anybody who could, you know, I like the idea of it being what they need to get going versus, you know, their primary or one of their first options.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, maybe.
I need $100,000. I have $100,000 in the bank. I could go ahead and open my business, do whatever I want. But I go, oh, free money. Let me apply. You know, I don't need the money, but I can apply and get it. I would prefer it if it's somebody who actually needs the money. You know, we can actually get that business that wouldn't otherwise have opened.
Your scoring system, I'm sorry, I'll.
Yeah.
No, the scoring system really looks at that to kind of, you know, and we're gonna ask for their last 3 years, you know, financials, so we can sit down and we can look through like, you know, what has been happening with the business, and we can kind of look at that criteria and then
Yeah.
make those recommendations.
Which category did those points fall into?
They fall into all 3. So basically the concept, the next concept, the capital, and then the loan program there.
So there'd be a further,
Yeah, we really want
a
to
further
see,
rubric within each category
Yeah,
to
yeah.
assign those points
if we
based on
have
that.
someone coming in for $250,000 on a revolving loan, they're probably working with the bank and they're just needing someone to fill that second position. So we're gonna look and we're gonna see if that, you know, if that business, what is
That's-
cash flowing, what's.
That's great. I just wanted to make, I didn't see it listed in
Yeah.
any of these options, so I just wanted to make sure it was
Yeah,
there.
we will, absolutely.
Perfect.
One of the things that, you know, John and I talked about is we don't want anybody squatting,
Yeah,
like coming in there, doing it and then not doing anything.
exactly.
So making sure that if this is going forward, something's going forward.
Yeah.
Like,
Got some time.
and there is a timeline that the city can keep people accountable to. Or there's penalties because we don't want someone squatting on something just because they got in there, got approved and then just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Aaron, Chris, any comments? We like this? Thumbs up? Yeah?
Sounds great if, you know, if the businesses need and to help them out, I'm all for that. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing, John, is there's and Taylor, there's a lot of positive feedback and that, I guess, taking this back to the
Take
council
it to their rural.
or the urban rural. Which is,
Thank you for your input.
Council.
Appreciate it.
all right,
Something, moving forward.
let's move on. I'm for discussion on tourism and hotel space in Sandy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. So one of the things we put on the agenda here is to really think about doing a hotel feasibility study here. We're missing out on tourism opportunities here. To really think about moving forward with that from a timing standpoint. And then being able to complete that, have a marketing brochure, also look at the, the demand for a hotel here is probably, we got 30-some thousand people that go through our town every day here. And then look at potential meeting space too within a hotel. So really defining what that market is and what the potential to capture. And doing that over the next year and then being able to go out and target a operator developer for that. So that's in front of you to get some feedback or thoughts on that here tonight. So.
I'll kick us off. You got something?
Well, I was gonna ask John just to add one more point, because
Yeah.
when this topic first came up with staff, my reaction was, can't build a hotel right now.
Right.
You touched on the length of time it takes
It
for
does.
something like that to happen, so maybe you could share for the group just
So
what that timeline looks like.
how it works out there, again, working for a large master developer over the years and we own hotels and as an operator of a hotel, or when you're looking to go into an area, you just don't wake up tomorrow and say like, hey, let's go build a hotel in Sandy, right? So what happens is there's conferences, there's a networking, and people start to talk and say, I've kind of been interested in doing something in Oregon, and they're like, oh, have you guys looked around Mount Hood? Yeah, I'm kind of looking around Mount Hood, and then, people will be like, well, I wonder what opportunities are around Mount Hood, right? So there's, really doing the due diligence starts like 4 years out for a hotel. And so you start looking at like, what's happening, what's the trend in a recreation area? So what a hotel provider would do is say, okay, well, let's look around the Mount Hood area, right? And they'll say like, oh, wow, it's interesting. City of Sandy's has done a hotel study. Let's sit down and talk to them, right? So we'll look at that. And if you're a Hyatt or a Marriott chain, you'll say, okay, you know what, our acquisition team, let's put out 2 years from now, let's start looking for an opportunity to find land. We like the demographics, we like the capture, we like the opportunity to be in this market. We see it's gonna work for us. So what they'll do is then we'll spend a couple of years like, okay, looking for that opportunity. If there's a pathway in the city, they can see they can meet the demographics, they can meet the revenue, there's opportunity there to capture that. They will pursue and they can see the opportunity for that. So they'll make the acquisition and then they'll put that in their timeline to build out. So it doesn't happen like within a year, you get a hotel stay. You have to be in the game, have the out there marketing to like a Marriott, to a Ritz-Carlton, to a Hyatt, and to them to think about being a target in your market there, right? So creating that opportunity. So again, do your market study, go to these conferences, promote Sandy, bring the awareness, the timing will happen, the people start having conversations and they'll come in, they'll want to sit down with the mayor and Tyler and the team here and say like, oh, this is really interesting, how is the business going to be? What is it like? What is really happening? And they'll look at that stuff. So from your standpoint, we're really missing on capturing those dollars and keeping them here for our businesses, right? So, I mean, when I see the amount of traffic that goes through here and, Chris and I were talking before, where are you gonna stay if you're skiing up there at the end of the night, you wanna come down or you wanna go up or you're coming for your sports events, like we need that here. And I think we're gonna find that there's an opportunity for that to capture that and to be able to promote the city. And back to what you're talking about, getting some new pictures done, being able to create that market brochure and having that data is real important to be able to go out there and do those steps, so.
Yeah, a little back in history a little bit, we did a market study. It was very much back when Scott Lazenby was here. So it meant Scott did the market study because that's what he just did. But we did have someone that we were dating for a while there to kind of go in behind the RV place up there. Now it's a housing development, but they were looking at that land to go through there. But we had gone through this place where we created, some dog brochures, whatever. But we had the market just kind of crash right there after the housing market. And then everyone kind of got a little bit antsy. It was a boutique type thing. They had one on the coast that was very interested in us at that time. But I think, that's been now, almost 20 years. And a lot has changed in our community. Also the recreations, for that. So I think one of the things that I see, and I know it's come up, I know Chair Roberts with the county has brought this up, and I see it in my own work of trying to be able to put on and find somewhere in Clackamas County, not that we're gonna be this in Clackamas County, nor do we want this here, is a place to have a conference, 500 people. I'm not saying we give something that has 500 people, but there's just nothing in here that can hold that, even in Clackamas or that. Now, the county might go do something, but that just tells you that there is a need, especially on this side of town. We, for work, have to go rent space in Washington County and go drive out to Tigard and Beaverton and those areas, just, without going downtown Portland. So there is that kind of need for that little conference type spaces that you can go up to the resort of the mountain, but to be honest, we've done a lot there and it's just getting really dated and it hasn't been kept up. It's kind of in a sad shape in some ways. And they have a beautiful spot up there, but I think there is that there. But to John's point, what we've talked about is making sure you can take that 1 page or 2 page or what do you want to call it and be able to go to conferences and show them. They're not just going to show up on your doorstep. You've got to go to them. And
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and one of the things we've always talked about, Sandy, is not being the pass-through, right? And we built that park, and it just came to me just now about, when you said the gateway to Mount Hood, I think we're the base, Sandy's the base camp of Mount Hood, and that's what we want it to become. We want to put people so they stay here. And if you think about climbing Everest, at base camp, there's no snow. It's fine. That's what Sandy's about. But we could be the place where everybody houses and then they travel up the mountain. And our park that we just built for that, to bring more tourism to us, there's no way to stay in town for all the guests that are going to come visit us for that park. And I would be an advocate for promoting, doing another hotel market study for sure. To help our city find more rooms for rent, or a hotel.
Yeah, you have 45 rooms in the city this size, I mean.
Yeah, we have 40 rooms at Best Western. And what was surprising is, it's not like, if you had 40 rooms, that's 40 ERUs. There's like a correction factor and it's not, it's.
Yeah, I think it's 1 per 6 rooms or 1 per 8
Yeah, it's
rooms.
like pretty low.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
When you
Yeah.
talk about that
It's good to know.
190 ERUs, if you set aside, 20, that would give you, 100, I mean, I don't know that that's how big we're gonna go, but I mean, we've got some capacity with the 190 ERUs, again, focusing some of those on commercial and industrial. So there is, so it's not like we'd have to wait until the final solutions in to do this, so.
30 or 45 ERUs could go to a really big hotel and restaurant and
Yeah,
convenience
I mean,
space.
if
Have you
it's
talked
for
to
every
Best
6
Western?
rooms.
What's their occupancy? Do you have any idea?
I haven't talked.
What their
about it.
occupancy rate is?
We would look at it.
I wonder what they're at.
Yeah, the other factor you have going on is I think Gresham has lost 3 hotels.
yeah,
To homeless shelters.
Well, they're different things.
Yeah.
There's
Extended stay.
some different things. There's nothing necessarily in a couple of them right now. I live down there.
Okay.
The closest hotel rooms you have to here, other than the Best Western, is out 181st and I-84.
Yes,
It's a long haul.
Airport way and all that, yeah.
So there's a lot of room you can grab.
Right.
Edgefield, that's a little, kind of a little different.
it's a boutique.
Yeah.
There's a Motel 6 right there on Burnside and.
I'm
Some-
thinking
yeah,
someplace
some-
you want to stay.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a nice place
Maybe
on
I'm a
Powell
little
and,
snobby, but
there's something over by the Burgerville, but yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that
Nice.
one's closed by the Burgerville.
Did it close?
Yeah.
No,
It's
they,
been closed for a
they
long
turned
time.
it into a,
Shelter.
No, the one behind it, the one,
Right behind it.
Yeah, there
oh,
is,
behind
there
it.
is a
because the
second
one
one.
kind of
It's still
across the
down.
Pony
street.
Soldier or,
No, that's further.
Pony
down.
Soldier's
The
gone.
one he's talking about is still open.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then, but there is one next to the
yeah.
Yeah.
Buy Mart or whatever.
Yeah.
There's
just down the
there-
road
yeah, there's no rooms in Gresham right now either.
Right.
And no offense to someone that lives in Gresham, but there is a different dynamic in the community.
Well,
So.
Well, I think that's where we capture.
If we're capturing people for tourism here, they're staying a long ways away.
Yeah.
So we definitely have an issue that we need beds.
We used to throw a conference up at the Resort of the Mountain. And we, for a couple of the things, we would bus people back to the one in Sandy here, but which is too small. And then also bus them into the Gresham when they had some aggression here about 10, 15 years ago. Because the resort wasn't big enough for to hold our conferences. So there is that need, and I think that there's people out there looking, especially after COVID, to meet in person. No one wants to meet online for a conference, so anyway, thanks, Chris, you have your hand up. You just gotta
Yes.
shout at me, because I look up kinda, but
That's okay, it just went up. No, I agree that we definitely need hotel and event space here. We just went about, I don't even, not even a month ago. Our ambassadors went to a conference for the ambassadors for state of Oregon. And they came back and really wanted to be hosting it. But we ran into the problem of the only place really to be able to host it with enough people would be up at the resort at the mountain. But we really wanted to showcase Sandy. So it was, how do we bus everybody back and forth? And even up at the resort, even if it was only 50 people, they were saying, well, you guys have to have food for all the meals because we can't accommodate that many people in our restaurants. So we have that need here in town. And back when we were a visitor center, we got phone calls weekly. Where can I stay? The Best Western's booked. And that was, 6 years ago or more. So I'm sure it's, even worse. We don't get as many phone calls for that anymore, but I can imagine, that it's not easy and people don't want to go to Gresham and come back.
thanks, Chris. I would love the idea of it being in our downtown, honestly. And we own property that we could sell or lease or however that wants to happen. There's a lot of different mechanisms, but it's right next to our base camp here. But you're walkable to a bunch of different restaurants and coffee shops and places that support. That's why I like it in the downtown area. And when I go and visit other places, I like to stay in that versus like, say, the east side of our town where we might have big lots or whatever. But, there's ways of doing that inside some spaces we have. But so what I'm hearing is a lot of positive there and a lot of head nodding. So we'll take that as an agreement of kind of pursuing that marketing, advertising, getting out there to see and take that back to the staff there. Is that good?
Thank you.
All right. Number 5, discussion on business appreciation event concept. We have 22 minutes.
Yeah, okay, great. One of the things that I think, would be really something to think about is, having a business appreciation event in January, probably, middle of January for holiday season there. Moving forward to just, doing a panel to talk about a couple things. One, just, the Sandy Ignite program, getting awareness out there to business. I think do it in the joint with the chamber, host it somewhere in a nice, in the evening. And have a panel talk about this event, talk about what you're doing. And then also like tonight, when we talked about the sewer, right? We'll have a concept idea thought of, right? But getting out in front with the business community and saying, hey, these are 2 options that we're looking at, right? Just the awareness and the more we do that with our business community and say like, we're working on it, here's where we're at, right? Here's the 2 options that we're moving for. Here's a program that we have just launched, the new Sandy Ignite program. It's gonna go open, right? And then I can have other folks from like Business Order and Clackamas, you talked about their grant, and a couple other people come and say like, here are some other resources for the business community, right? Just creating more awareness for them and appreciation. Sometimes we forget about our business community, right? So it's no fault, we always just get busy, but like really getting in there and helping them because they're like some of the best advocates, just even to talk about putting it in your lobby, like here's what's happening with the sewer, just awareness, and bringing that awareness helps with the community work. So I wanted to put out there. I don't know, Chris, I think it'd be great to do it with the chamber to bring all the businesses in and just as a joint effort and talk about that from that standpoint. So putting it out there for discussion and thoughts around that too, so.
I think it's good. The education is so important because there's so many rumors out there. It's just rampant. And nobody knows, no one wants to take the time to come to a meeting and figure it out, but.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to get at least the business educated, because then they can educate their customers.
Exactly. They're a great resource. We have them come there. We can even, have simple brochure we can talk about. And even if we want to give them some boards to take back and post, one of the things that the city of Tiger did really well is when they were working about looking at, the public works new police station, right? They posted it in the theater, the lobby, right? So when people come in, they see it, right? Here's what it is, awareness. Oh, okay, so just getting that out in the business community is I think a great opportunity for us to really talk about, this is a great business program we're doing. Yeah, we're working through sewer, but look, we're doing these things and we've got projects that have started and we've got projects that we're continuing to work with property owners through. That's them too.
Now, if only we had somewhere to host it.
Yeah, we have.
Nicely said.
Maybe multiple nights.
I like the idea of having it in the business and having the boards, the city, can we do that? There's an expense to it, but I think it's well worth it because you get an accurate information out. You get the same information out. And because, there's rumors, we talk about rumors and those rumors are just because we aren't looking at the same thing. So if you're posting this poster board at the theater,
Yeah.
and then you go over to Boring Brewery,
Yeah.
you get the same stuff, but also I think it's something that the businesses may be interested in too, is also, it kind of shows that, hey, they're involved in our community as that business, they're in the know, and I'm getting information about my business or community without having to come to City Hall because, it can be the wrong time of day, you're busy doing these things. And you're not gonna come to a city council meeting, I mean, just because you've got sports or whatever it may be going on. So I think that idea of having something that is done up with, the accurate information that can then be shared consistently.
Yeah, when John and I, we went to the League of Oregon Cities Conference and of course, you had Business Oregon and you had, the economic development folks, you had all these different folks that had funding available. And so, including this Ignite program that we're just talking about, I was like, how can we get the word out to all our businesses that this is available? And so then he started telling me about what they've done in other places where they have this appreciation business dinners. And I think it's just so important to not only advertise the Sandy Ignite program, but also, as from an ERU perspective, are there existing businesses in town that are just interested in expanding their existing business? And, so it's not a lot more ERUs, but there's opportunities to expand the business and maybe some additional jobs and stuff. And then there's also this idea of, again, kind of grant stacking where you kind of maybe get some matching money from Mount Hood Economic Development or Clackamas Economic Development or these other organizations out there that do have these grants available that can help do some of the matches for the Sandy Ignite program. So I'm really excited about it. Do you think that the businesses will come? I guess that's my question.
They normally do. We'll go out and we'll walk and promote it. So we'll definitely go door to door and we post it and then we have a deadline when they RSP. But what I've found is like a lot of times we just back to what the chair said, like businesses get busy running, but then when they know like, oh, there's going to be 10 more of my friends and that in this community, they'll come and they'll listen. And it's a chance for them to, really think about, oh, this and get the true information in some way. That's what I've seen in other communities, right? They're not going to take off every Monday, twice a month to come in and listen at city council, right? But then that, but like getting them once a year to come in and sit down and then understand like, oh, Business Oregon has this type of export program that I could go through and use for my business. I didn't know that was there, right? It's helping bring that awareness to how we can help them succeed, but also what we're doing within the local community too, so.
Yeah, and other businesses help to promote that, like the chamber. Chris, you have your hand up?
Yes, with the question of will they come? I think definitely, they will, they'll be excited about this. I think it's great. But you're going to have those that just can't, especially your restaurants, if it's in an evening. I had a meeting scheduled with 8 of the restaurants in town for Monday, and we did a poll to see when, and they all picked 2 o'clock on Monday. Well, I had 4 people show up out of all that. So even though it was on their calendar, so there'll probably be those that don't, but I think the bigger majority will be, but I think timing or the day of the week will be a huge factor in how that affects business. Because I know a lot of them have good intentions, but they have an emergency or an employee who's not there and they just have to not be able to make it, unfortunately. But I think we'll have a great turnout. My other thought with that too is the businesses, they don't always have time to read through emails. I'm guilty of that in my personal, in my email stack, my personal is huge. But doing a personal visit, dropping in and having maybe even a paper invite, whether it's just a little, 8x11 sheet of paper that says, here's what's happening. That makes a huge difference to those personal invites with getting them there.
Maybe if we put like official notice, something scary looking and tape it to the front door and ink.
Wait, water bill.
And then it'll be like, oh, being invited now.
Shut off notice.
Come down to this meeting. Come to this meeting to.
Official notice from the city.
OSHA meeting.
No, we don't give big a heart attack. All right, any other discussions? Do you have anything else, John?
No, thank you so much, sir.
Is there any other comments we have?
When would you look at doing the first one of these?
I think, mid-January.
Yeah, that's what it has in my agenda, mid-January 2026.
Oh, when's that?
That would give us time to work with Tyler and we could get it, find a spot in November and then promote it, starting at the beginning of December. And somewhere, probably the latter part, I would think after the second holiday, then somewhere in January, we'd find a location and do it from there, so.
Or look at doing it, off season, spring or fall. January, we're rocking. Hopefully. I don't know. That's just some input.
Well, that's good input, because I think the other piece of it is, honing in on what information is shared from a city perspective. So it's great to bring everyone together, but we also need to make sure that we have a consistent, clear, concise, message or talking point from the city side. And maybe that takes a little bit longer to develop what that message is or the visuals that go along with that message. And so, we can shoot for January, but we'll also need to be realistic. about
April, May,
how that
September, October,
fits together.
I think are the slow, because it's in between
Kind of the shoulder
seasons.
seasons.
Their summer is done, winter hasn't kicked in yet, or vice versa. That's just I don't know how everybody else is affected by that.
That's how my business runs
All right.
up here.
I,
I'm ready for snow.
January, I'm,
Well, yeah, your business when it's dark and wet, you're thriving.
Well, we also want to get, customers for the Sura, kind of,
right, that's just my input.
yeah.
I think this is, you do it once and you kind
Yeah.
of learn and you
Yeah.
repeat and,
Some
but we gotta
cities do
keep
it
it up.
twice a year, some do it once. I think, depending where I think just, even if it's just awareness of here's what we're doing on the sewer, if we're not at the point of deeper level of communication, I think just getting out and letting people know, here's what we're working on, here's an option where we're at, even if you talk for 5 minutes or something, I think that's great awareness. I think the main thing is really helping the business community understand, here's a new program that we launched. It's open, please apply, and then also just having, a panel of experts to talk about other options to help businesses within Sandy to be able to have resources to be able to either expand their business or if they're gonna, or recruit members from that standpoint, I think it's helpful from that, so. And then maybe you do one and, you see how well attended and get some feedback, and then if it's like Jim said, each community is different, some we see, we see, you know, in smaller communities, 50 to 100 businesses show up. And they're like, they're talking and they're very well connected, you know, but they want to know like what's happening in their community, city and stuff from some point, so it depends.
I would add to that too, just briefly, that, you know, if the intent of this is pushing out the new program and having a panel with, you know, Business Oregon and other lenders or financiers,
Mhm.
that's one thing. I think on the utility side of the conversation too, we're kicking around a lot of different ideas on how we can message that and be more available, not just to residents, but to businesses. And so one concept that we've kicked around is, you know, having a table at the farmer's market during that whole season, just a City of Sandy table. So anyone that's walking by sees us and asks any question you want about the city. If it's utilities or recreation
Yeah.
or parks purposes, but just being seen and out there and open. You know, maybe that's a quarterly
Mhm.
in winter. I'm gonna go to Whippersnappers and work with you on a Friday night that I can just sit at a table and talk to parents. And, you know, in the summer, it's sitting out on your patio and talking to people who are having a beer at 7 PM. Trying just to figure out a way to be more accessible and answer those questions, recognizing that not everyone's gonna come to a council meeting. Not everyone's gonna watch a council meeting. Not everyone wants to deal with the, you know, entire concept of a council meeting, right? That can be intimidating for some, or it's,
Mhm.
you know, just not interesting to others. And so we're working on trying to pinpoint ideas of where we can be out in the public to answer questions and just be more visible. So if it's not in a business appreciation type
Yeah.
concept, we are working on other ideas of how to do that in a way that meets people where they're at so that we can share information, but also remove some of the excuses of, you know, I don't have time for a council meeting. Okay, but do you have time for a Saturday morning in a park or a Thursday afternoon at food carts or you know, trying just to spread ourselves out so that we can make sure we're meeting people where they're at.
I think part of this Ignite program and the gap funding pieces of it may not be with existing businesses already, because they already have a business growing. It may be with the property owners of some vacant lots and buildings that, you know, need to be, you know, redeveloped or whatever. Because of the cost of that, they've already, you know, trying to turn that over. So I think you have multiple audiences.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, any other questions or discussions? Do you have one question? What's being built right there by Autos, and you see all the or am I getting all the right stores?
Where
Two
the old
Brothers.
bunkhouse.
Yeah, where the old
was.
bunkhouse was that was torn down. Now I see.
Yeah, it's gonna be an art studio.
Where?
Have you met?
Just right
that
down-
business
Pioneer.
owner?
Yeah, they're gonna put, they're gonna have a clay making in the bottom down there, so yeah, so that's a great thing to be celebrating. You know, you're talking, well, we got the sewer moratorium, but here's someone building away and gonna bring in a really nice, you know, art studio in there and then have clay classes, and I mean, that's it. I mean, the foundation's poured and I've met with the builder and they're, you know.
So did someone come in and buy it and then tear it down to build
Yeah.
for this
and
idea?
it got all for-
And they got apartments up above.
I don't think there's I don't know.
Phase
I-
2,
Yeah.
so there was only enough sewer capacity for the commercial side of that
Okay.
business. My understanding is there was a phase 2 for some further enhancements on the second level. At least that was a conceptual idea I saw originally. I don't know if that made it into the final design plan or not, but you know, to your point earlier, Jeremy, right, there's I think it was you that mentioned just the expansion of a business, right? Or we have businesses that are vacant, but that building has capacity. Maybe that was you there that was saying that. So highlighting like, here's the buildings
Yeah.
that can be filled and they have capacity already. The moratorium doesn't really apply to those situations. And how do you share that message and encourage people to look at those
Yeah.
sites for development or redevelopment?
They already have the ERUs
They already have the.
attached to it, or
Yep.
maybe only need 1 or 2 ERUs
Mhm.
You know,
to grow that for whatever their need is.
Paola's Pizza Barn is another example of business that, you know, currently not opening, has a lot of ERUs associated with that. And so, you know, if someone else were to come in and purchase that, it could be a restaurant, it could be something different, right? Because there's ERUs and sewer capacity associated
Or
with
the
that
old
site. So
lumberyard? Any ideas on going over
Or
there?
can you buy that, take their ERUs and move it somewhere else and just sit on the land until it comes available in the next 10 years?
I would
And
encourage
build,
anyone wanting to do that to talk to city staff so we can discuss the parameters of that situation, but it's not a hard no. There's just.
I'm just thinking of
specific criteria.
opportunities, right?
Yeah.
You may
I think
find
that's-
stuff that you wanna develop here.
Yep.
You're willing to buy the land and
Transfer.
and develop on that in 10 years from now. And it's not gonna, but you see how,
Mhm.
yeah.
Speaking of open buildings, have we heard whether or not Next Adventure is coming back?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
I
are.
saw that they said that they were going to, I just didn't
Yeah.
know if it was official yet.
Someone bought them out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody just last minute bought them.
Well, it was
Whether
kind of a
employees,
coordinated effort by some of the existing employees and some of the interested.
I just haven't
partners,
seen any
so, yeah.
movement yet, so.
Yeah,
And
exciting.
they're gonna reopen those Sandy ones.
Yep. That was
That's what I've read. I haven't heard of, got a
Yeah.
phone call from anyone. I've been waiting to see the for sale
Yeah,
sign get
I've
removed.
seen it
when
red,
I
but yeah,
drive
that
in
for sale
every day.
sign's still up and it's still empty, so.
Yeah, if we hear anything and there's interest, I can share that with the group once we hear something. Yeah, there anything official yet, or at least I haven't.
Is there any movement on the food cart court by the gym?
Right
So there's
behind
a
you.
design behind you.
Oh, that's the.
Oh, hey, look at that.
That is an example of, a parcel and a development concept that has ERUs associated with it. Um,
The rifle, right?
Isn't it the Ripple?
Ripple.
I don't think it's the rifle, it's Ripple.
Riffle.
Two Fs.
Riffle? Oh,
Two
I-
S.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it's always been referred to as the red, okay.
And one of the concepts for the Ignite Sandy plan that John presented, that where, they've got ERUs, they have interest. Is there something that the city can do to be a catalyst in speeding up that interest, right?
So it's still,
So-
it's not dead yet.
It's not dead yet.
Okay.
It's another example of being in the urban renewal district and having a land that's not, it's being taxed, let's say $1,000, but you put a building on it and that is now being taxed $5,000, but then, that goes into the urban renewal and it repeats itself, right?
These grants that we're talking about can help
Mhm.
spur someone to do something. That's exactly what we want.
Mhm.
And Jeremy, that's a good point. I mean, I won't go into specific dollar amounts, right? But the idea. Maybe to someone on this board or to staff, in some cases, like a $25,000 or $50,000 investment seems like, gosh, that's a lot of money for, maybe what doesn't seem like the best investment. When you start looking at a dollar for dollar comparison, it's like, well, you recoup that money in 7 years from property taxes
Mhm.
that the city sees, but then what's the other benefits, right? It was 10 jobs or 12 jobs that are living wage, and it was transit tax into our transit system, and it was more foot traffic in that
Sidewalk
part
that
of
got
town, a
finished
sidewalk
out.
extension.
White that got turned down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other things that come along with it, and an investment of, $50,000 can really hit a lot of different areas in our community, not just the city's pockets as far as property taxes go.
Right. Any other?
Well, I just wanted to kind of just check in and see, I feel like, having John on our staff as consultant has really been helpful at trying to kind of get us more focused and, actually seeing some results as far as not just kind of, it's not to say that those plans that we've done have, are nothing, but having us, having actual things that we can kind of offer and see to fruition is, I'd be curious to see what you all think. Are we moving in the right direction as a city for economic development and involving you all and engaging as many opportunities as we can? Could we be doing more, different?
I think these are great examples, yeah.
I was reminded Monday night of our economic development strategy that was kind of adopted 2 years ago, and then we re-voted on it last night or on Monday night at the planning commission. And then I think it's going back to council as an ordinance sometime soon. So it might be nice, seeing as how it was referred to as forgotten, that we maybe revisit, at least review that and see if what's in that plan. Kind of.
Oh, you mean the plan that we just did here a couple of years ago as
Mhm.
far as it didn't get it? I mean, I've been off council now
So-
for a couple of years, so.
I would not have used the term forgotten.
It
Not
wasn't my term
thrilled
either,
that
but.
term was used, but that aside, the plan was approved or adopted by the governing body, but it wasn't included in the comprehensive plan as like a background document for that purpose, and so that's what we're working through right now.
Okay, so we did it,
Officially building it into the comp plan as this supporting document for,
but it was adopted by the council.
yeah. I mean,
Okay,
we
thank you, because that was a lot of work.
No, by motion, but not by ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah,
So.
this is the technicality. We
Yeah.
use that plan for many different things internally,
Okay.
right now, sort of. As the framework of. The basis for how we think maybe future ERUs should be allocated, or the basis of, when we talk about grant programs, like how do we. When we get to a scoring,
I was gonna
You
say,
know,
this
idea-
kind of shows what was,
exactly.
yeah, if I was sitting somewhere and somebody said that was forgotten, I'd say, well, what's this?
We use it.
It's all
quite a bit.
over in it.
Yeah. It just wasn't, officially adopted in the right manner to include it in our overall.
Well, thanks for
so-
identifying that to get that corrected, because that was a lot of money, work, sweat.
Yep.
I think it's been great. I'm glad John's on board and guiding us in this. You bring a lot of knowledge
Thank you.
and I've had the joy of being able to work with you outside of this meeting and in our conversations. I see a lot of momentum going forward with your expertise. And so thanks to the council for bringing him on board.
It's nice to feel like we're moving forward, not just sitting here saying hi to each other.
Yeah.
We kind of got stalled for a while, but things,
We had COVID, something called.
well, you
COVID that
had
came in
COVID, you
for-
got the moratorium and stuff, so it's nice to,
Yeah.
we're moving forward.
All right, well, it's 8:01. I apologize, we're 1 minute over. I'm late.
It's 8 o'clock on my computer still, so you're
So my watch says 8.
So we'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:01. Thank you all for coming.
Sure.
You can hang out here as long as until Tyler kicks you out.
I was curious how you were gonna end that sentence. As long as you want to, as long as you can.
Until Tyler kicks you out.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, thanks for coming.